Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegraywolf.com. Well, just like every week, there's plenty to talk about, and very great conversation that I thought came through from last week's question, and a little, I'd say a little surprising in many ways, and some cool areas. As I always ask questions here in the Weekly Wringer, I'm never really sure exactly where you guys are going to go with them, and I'm always very pleased because I think things, always really take on different tenor than perhaps I was expecting, and I think this week's question about superhero movies definitely did that. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's talk about what we're going to do today. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the superhero movie question from last week. Having seen the Avengers, I can give you the post having seen Avengers readout, right? And give you a little perspective on how I think all of that plays in. I want to talk about, obviously, what was burning for you, and the unique perspective that you guys bring to this in terms of if you're really sick of superhero movies or not, and to talk about superhero movies in general a little bit. And I'll give you my 2 cents on it, as I always do. We'll probably also welcome the new people here in a minute as well. And then I will ask you a question for next week's Weekly Wringer, which I think will have you thinking about the future of online games. Teaser, that's what we call it. It's a teaser. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. I think one of the things I want to start off with here is that the conversation is always great on the Weekly Wringer, and I really love that. Very proud of it. Very proud of the fact that we have some great conversations here on the show, and I have been, really pleased over the last year that we've been able to keep the conversation, even about stupid things, at a very high level. I think. And I'm just going to throw this out there, guys. I'm going to brag about you a little bit. I think you'd be hard-pressed to go to any video game community out there and find the kind of high-quality information, the kind of high-quality discussion that we find here, because you guys really bring so much of that to the table. That's all about you. So I appreciate it. Let's keep on trucking. Nobody's going anywhere. We'll keep on making videos and keep on asking questions, and you guys keep telling all your friends and bringing people in, because the more the merrier with the conversation here in the Weekly Wringer. All right, commercial over. Let's move on to the work that we always have to do. First, let's welcome our new members. I try to do that every week as a means of really bringing people into the community, because that's what we have here on the Weekly Wringer, is a community of gamers, and I'm very glad to have each and every one of you. New to the community this week, we've got a few folks. Number one, I guess I should say, Evil Ralph 1. It makes me wonder if there's an Evil Ralph 2 or 3. But in any case, Evil Ralph, even if you are evil, it's good to have you with us. Welcome to you. Next, we have a very interestingly phonetically spelled version of what I believe to be Felix. Welcome to Felix. Great to have you as a part of the community as well. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have I Am Author, which I thought was a pretty cool idea, right? If you were going to add comments to any particular site out there, I think that's a pretty good name. I Am Author. You should respect my authority, right? Very good. So welcome to all 3 of you. Glad to have you on board with the Weekly Wringer. Welcome to the community, and I can't wait to see the continuous outpouring of wonderful commentary that you guys continue to bring. All right, now let's talk about the question from last week. I asked you guys in the wake of the very first weekend of Avengers, which let's just say was a tremendous success. Why do I say it's a tremendous success? Forget about the quality of the film for a moment, and just looking at the opening weekend, they have the largest opening weekend worldwide for any film in history. That's a big deal. That means the hype machine was working. That means people were excited to see it numerous times, because at the end of the day, you can't just get people once to get that kind of an opening. People have to go see it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So people really have enjoyed this movie, and it's been a tremendous success. They've definitely paid off. Marvel developed this, Disney purchased Marvel, which I think made a big difference in what they were trying to do, and I think some people thought it might derail the vision, so on and so forth, after, you know, movies like John Carter. In any case, I think it's safe to say that The Avengers has been a successful movie, and let's face it, for any of you that have seen it, and I have now at this point, I can say it's a very good movie. There's no reason to doubt that it should be where it is, and it should be enjoying the kind of success that it is enjoying. So I'm going to leave it at that in terms of my review thus far, and jump into the question I asked you about it. What I asked you was less about the Avengers specifically, and more about the superhero movie phenomenon in general. And what I asked was, in the wake of all of this, and I really mean years, a decade, more than a decade, of superhero movies that seem to have been kind of really every year, almost every season, right? There's another superhero movie, it seems like. I asked you, are you tired of superhero movies? And the response was great. And I think, let me try to get a couple of the sentiments that are pretty universal by and large. I don't know if there's anything universal. Several of you argued very disparate positions on this. But in any case, one of the things that seemed to be running through everyone is that you weren't necessarily sick of superhero movies per se. You're sick of the idea of rebooting. Rebooting superhero movies really seems to diminish the quality of what people are doing out there. It seems to really lower the consequence to what you see in the film. And it also provides I think, or as many of you said, and I agree with, a bad safety net for making a bad movie about a superhero. Or, as it were, even bad series about superheroes. If you make a bad one and things end up being awful, it's okay because you can just go make a new one. So, some of you are sick of it, but you're really sick of the idea that because rebooting just taints it for you. Some of you that aren't are more thrilled because of the idea that hey, these movies are getting made and that's a great thing. And even if most of them suck, there are still 20-30% of them, maybe even fewer, that are really good and that should be celebrated. And hey, look, that's the same ratio that really goes through all of movies. So why should superhero movies be any different? In any case, I seem to see the patterns for those things kind of sweeping through what you guys were talking about. But let's get into some of the specifics. Garmin Bozia. If I didn't comment on how awesome that name is, I'm going to comment on it now. I think that's a great name. Is sick, tired of superhero movies. But Garmin Bozia is as tired with superhero movies as they are with the rest of Hollywood, as it were. Because really, for Garmin Bozia, it's more of a matter of lack of creativity, lack of energy, lack of a real creative drive in terms of movie making in general in Hollywood that is only just kind of more indicative within the superhero space. And Garmin Bozia is sick of that. And I think that's a great point, right? So superhero movies are, in some ways, and have become almost even a better reflection of what the energy is in Hollywood. When Spider-Man came out and became so popular so quickly, and X-Men followed soon after, and so on and so forth, it was very easy, right, to think that superhero movies were just going to be the biggest thing ever forever and ever and ever. And I think there were a lot of great movies in Hollywood then, and things have stagnated since then. Superhero movies haven't done the kind of job, I would say, in the recent past that they've done before. And Hollywood is in many ways the same way. You see a lot more of the independent kind of films that have done very well and that are making up a larger part of the industry. I'm not saying that they make up the bulk, let's say, but they certainly have their own merits, right, in their own ways. So I think that's a good point to be made. Furious George talked about, not necessarily tired of them, no. The potential is out there for these movies because of the fact that, think of comic books, folks, because most superheroes come from comic book lore, right? These superheroes come from comic book lore. They have literally thousands, of pages of writing, of art, of history to go through, narrative to go through for most of these characters. And it's difficult in many ways to kind of, reduce that down to a single movie, a single series of movies. And therefore, why not go after some of the more creative stories that the comic books have presented for some of these superheroes, especially if rebooting is as common as it seems to be. Why not be able to go through and try to really figure out what some of the best stories were of these characters, and go bring them through those stories. That would be fun. Rather than just redoing an origin story 100 different ways, why not go back and really just try to see what stuff is out there from a creative perspective? I agree. I think that's a great point. Akira VGA from VideoGameAuctions.com, always a welcomed addition to our community, made a fantastic point. The origin stories, which is what many of you say is the best part. And I would argue, if there is a good part to something like Captain America, a movie I really did not like earlier in the year, if there is a good part to it, it's the origin story part. The rest of the movie really kind of sucks, right? And you could probably say that about a lot of movies. Even the original Spider-Man, the origin story is very, very good. The rest of the movie kind of blows. And probably at that point our expectations hadn't been set very high, so we didn't really care. Well, we should care. But let me finish the point that Akira VGA makes. Origin stories are the only good ones that people really love to see in the theater. And then the gears shift. So that'll get you through a movie, right? You can't do an origin story for 2 movies or 3 movies. At that point, it becomes about the interesting villains, right? Think about even something like The Dark Knight, which I thought was, think about Batman Begins, right? Batman Begins is an incredible movie. I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. And it was a great origin story. There was a kind of, weird plot at the end with Scarecrow, and it gets wiped out about trying to poison the entire city. But let's put that behind us. At that point, the movie ends with him finding a Joker card, right? Because the only way they can get us back to the theater is now that we know who Batman is and know that Batman can fight crime, we need to be in a place where the interesting villains come out, so that we'll go back to the theater to go see Batman go beat these guys up. So, and the Joker does that, and now we're starting to see what's going to happen with the closing of the trilogy, with the Dark Knight Rises coming. Only a few months away now. Can't believe what time it is of the year. It's unbelievable. In any case, Mr. K talked about the fact that we have comic book expectations and we get Hollywood results. And I'm boiling that down, right? And I have to tell you, I think that's I think it's a very insightful comment, right? So the idea of, these stories mostly come from comic books. They come from those of us that enjoyed the kind of over-the-top nature of comics when we were younger, on into today. We really love the way that comics develop these stories, and we have some of the expectations of what that might be like. And what ends up happening, and this is why I find it absolutely absurd what they did to Captain America in the Captain America movie, but I think, and I would argue, was restored to him in the Avengers movie, which is probably my favorite part of the whole film. If you go into Captain America having known a little bit of the story of Captain America, having been especially in the origins, when Captain America first begins, right? Not later when there's this kind of crisis of identity during Vietnam and all these other kinds of things, right? But you go back to what really makes Captain America, and they completely destroyed that character in the movie. They just watered it down so badly, so that if you had comic book expectations, you ended up seeing a movie that was awful. Because you got Hollywood results. watered down character, overly PC, doing everything they could do not to.